Well, I'll leave it. Just in case. Because I'm...
He was my boss. He did. Like within 5 minutes, he was like, I need to do
We communicate very well.
That's my love language as well.
I just want to make sure it's very quick.
It's very good. I know when you're like, I have to 17. Yeah, I have
I just go from my personal experience. I just keep forgetting you're I-95 all the time. It's like 5 or 6 minutes. Put 5 minutes in. This is traffic. I get to do it. I work it. Yeah, gotcha. I want to warn you
That's hard to do. It's a lot of work. Okay. All right, very good. So good morning. My name is Jim Ports. I'm chairman of the Maryland Transportation Authority Board, and I hereby call this meeting of the MDTA Board to order at 9:01 a.m. This morning, we're having our meeting in person at MDTA headquarters, and in accordance with the live streaming law, this meeting is being live streamed on the MDTA Board webpage. I would like to say welcome to the members and staff who are with us today. As a reminder, I ask anyone who is in the room with us this morning refrain from speaking unless you're presenting or answering questions to avoid background noise on the live stream. There are no members of the public, no elected officials, and we do have some media who are in the room, but not pre-registered, so that'll be fine. And for those who are watching this meeting via live stream, we have posted the materials for today's meeting on the MDTA webpage so that you can follow along if you like. We now begin with today's agenda. Okay. First on the agenda is the approval of the minutes.
I'll move for approval of the minutes of open session meeting minutes of January 27th, 2022.
Okay. Second. It's been moved and seconded for approval. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
I'll also move that we approve the closed session meeting minutes of January 27th, 2022.
Okay, it's been moved
A second.
and second to approve the closed session meetings minutes, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Open and closed session meetings are approved. Next on the agenda is an update, second quarter operating budget comparison, review of actual versus projected fiscal year 2022 operating budget spending. Jeffrey Brown.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Jeffrey Brown, Budget Director of the MDTA, and as just was stated, I'm here to give an update on the operating budget full year 2022 as of the end of December 2021. As of December 2021, well, the key takeaways for the budget, as of December 31st, 31% of the budget was spent compared to a target of 50%. All objects except Object 13 were at or below the targeted spending levels. You'll hear a little bit repetitively, there's three major drivers of this variance. One is the personal vacancies, kind of the leftover from the hiring freeze. Second is the seasonality of certain expenses, which typically occur towards the latter half of the year, and the timing of invoices, things like purchase of vehicles and things like that, which come in when they come in. They aren't smoothed across the year. Starting with Object 1, it is Object 1 and Object 2 is below budget at 42%. Again, the biggest driver is the ongoing vacancies, which drive that lower than budget expected spend. Communications, Object 3 is below at 15%. Two takeaways, telecommunications is at 25%. Again, this is where vacancies have an impact, less people, less equipment, less telecommunication plans. But the biggest driver is the state paid telecommunication Object 0305, which is 0% right now. This is a state radio system invoice, which is usually 1.7 million, and that just has not hit yet, so that drives the underspend. All the other ones, all the other sub-objects are at a 40% spend. Object 4, travel, is at 16% spend. This is somewhat a little bit of the ongoing COVID-19 effects, more teleworking, teleconferencing, some canceling of conferences, things of that nature drive this performance. Fuel and utilities, Object 6 is at a 33% spend. Electricity is a driver of that, which is below budget at 29%. This is driven by, we're doing LED replacements, typically a little bit more energy efficient. Also, some timing of invoices, and then the removal of the toll booth removals drive down the electricity needs. Motor vehicle operations and maintenance, Object 7 is at 37%. Again, the primary driver is the timing of invoices and when the purchases of the vehicles come in. At this point, we expect to be on budget at the year end. Contractual services, Object 8 is at a 13% spend. There's numerous drivers around this. Advertising is at 10%. Two things. One, usually the major campaigns are in the latter half of the year, so there's a timing issue. Plus, there was a miscoding of 384 or 348,000. I believe that should have gone to capital, but that will be changed and rectified. Engineering expense at 0807 is at 20%. Again, driven by the timing of the work, and the invoices accounts for the underspend. At this point, we do expect to be at budget. Equipment repairs and maintenance is above budget at 62%. This is the timing of the IT storage invoices which hit. Full year, we expect to be on budget. Building repairs and maintenance is at a 23% spend. Again, a little bit of the seasonality, but another driver of this was the sludge removal for the Baltimore Harbor Tunnel. We actually did that in-house as opposed to contractual, as we have in the past, and we're able to save money by doing so. Janitorial services at 34% spend, and that's driven by not having access to certain buildings due to shutdown for construction. So that limited access for the janitorial services. Excuse me. The next three, education training, management studies, and security services are all below budget. Again, those are all really driven by the timing and the seasonality. Nothing we see at this point expects that to be anything other than budget at this point. Fiscal services, Easy Pass retail fees, Object 829 is below budget at 23%. Timing of payments, plus we did have we do expect larger payments in January that will start bringing this back to budget. The primarily IT objects, which is 841 through 869, are at a 30% spend. As I mentioned before, with the timing of the storage invoices, this is really the timing of the invoices, and we really do expect this just to be on budget at this point, nothing unusual. And then all the other contractual, I'm sorry, missed one here. Easy Pass Service Center fees cost is at a negative 8% spend. That's some miscoding of vendor payments. With the correction, we do expect this to come back close to budget. All other contractual services are at a 30% spend. Supplies and materials, Object 9 is at 30%. Both roadway maintenance and salt, as you can imagine, are heavily seasonal. We typically have higher maintenance expense in the third and fourth quarter, so we do expect this to come back towards budget. And salt's a kind of the great unknown. That's really more dependent upon weather. Depending on the season we have, kind of depends whether we under or are on budget on that. And we just don't have enough information at this point. Uniforms is at a 37% spend. The driver of this is vacancies, no person, no uniform. And we have seen some supply chain issues in that, where orders are taking extremely long to come through, so they aren't being, we do see some impact or disruption due to that. Easy Pass transponders, 951 is at 23%. We expect this to be closer to budget, as we're seeing a greater need for transponders going forward. Replacement equipment, Object 10 is at 36% spend. A big driver is the equipment for the Nice Bridge. The administration building has been delayed, and we expect these funds to be rolled into next year. Additional equipment is at 7%. And again, this is primarily timing of equipment orders, which kind of come in when they come in. And then fixed costs is the one that's over budget at a 90% spend. That's really driven by an insurance invoice, Object 1309, that is above budget at 112%. We expect the remaining sub-objects, however, to be close to budget. That concludes my presentation. I'll be glad to take any questions at this time.
Any questions from the board? No? Well, as always, Jeffrey, you've done a great job again, keeping us updated on the budget. I'm going to thank you very much for your work and diligence. Okay. With that, we're going to have a next order of business update. Second quarter capital budget comparison review of actual versus projected fiscal year 2022 capital budget spending, and that's Jeannie Marriott.
Good morning. I'm here to provide an update on the status of the actual fiscal year 22 spending against the fiscal year 22 capital budget in the fiscal year 22 through 27 CTP. This information was presented to the Finance Committee on February 8th. As of December 31st, 31.8% of the fiscal year 22 capital budget was spent as compared to the targeted spending level of 50%. The total budget for fiscal year 22 is $602.9 million. The actual spending through the second quarter was $191.5 million. 25 of the 95 projects budgeted in fiscal year 22 were within the acceptable spending limits of 25 to 75%. Due to normal lags in invoicing, plus or minus 25% of the 50% target is determined to be reasonable. Now, if you please turn to attachment A. Listed here are 8 projects that were budgeted for more than $10 million each in fiscal year 22. The total fiscal year 22 budget for the projects listed is $410.8 million. Actual spending through the second quarter was $135.5 million, which is 33% of the budget. $275 million remain to be spent to reach 100% spending of the fiscal year 22 budget. Thank you for listening. Are there any questions?
Any questions from board members? No? No? Okay. Well, thank you, Jeannie. Appreciate it. Next order of business is update of traffic and revenue. Monthly update on traffic and revenue will be done by Deb Sharpless.
Good morning.
Morning, Deb.
Morning. So if I refer you to item number 4 in your agenda. At the top of your summary memo, I'll start with key takeaways. First is that we continue to have expected revenue, that's the adjusted revenue, to outperform the financial forecast. Second key takeaway in your materials is that the difference between actual revenue and adjusted revenue is improving. So in other words, actual revenue being under the forecast, the amount that we're under has been reducing, as well as the timing differences that we had that we expect to collect by the end of the fiscal year. Those timing differences are also reducing. And the third and the most significant takeaway is, if you remember in prior conversations that we had some concerns involving the current year Easy Pass to actual revenue not aligning with the forecast. That has been resolved. We know exactly what that was, and there's no negative impact to us, both this year as well as into future years, and I'll explain that more in just a minute. So underneath your key takeaways is your summary. You'll see on the table that's provided, unadjusted revenue, so this is actually cash in hand from tolls, is below forecast by just under $18 million. We have timing differences of just under $30 million. When you net those together, we expect to exceed our forecast by just under $12 million. Again, timing differences are those things that we, at the time of the forecast, believed would be in hand by now, but we still have every expectation that they'll be in by the end of the year. Should something occur unexpectedly, they will not result in us violating our financial standards. So basically, the cash on hand that we have now, as we continue that trend, that will allow us to meet our financial coverage requirements. So next on page 2, we talk about the elimination of the current Easy Pass revenue under the performance. And if you remember in prior conversations, we kept on each month digging a little deeper and a little deeper, trying to figure out what it was, because normal things that could explain the difference were not panning out. Like traffic was there, where traffic was in relation to that revenue, it didn't make sense. The composition was the same. So what we have determined, this is the first time I ever know this has happened, is there was an overstatement in the financial forecast. There was backlog revenue that was included in the current revenue from our independent traffic and revenue forecast. Now, on the surface, you might think, oh, that's not good. But the forecast, it's just that. It's a forecast as of that moment in time. It has no impact whatsoever on our actual revenue. And so if you look at the stacked bar chart in your materials, you see the official forecast, and this is as of January, okay? It was $476.5 million. If you adjust for the portion of this overstatement as of January, the unofficial forecast should have been 455, but our actual expected revenue as of right now is 488. Yeah. So this mistake in the official forecast, it has no bearing on the actual revenue that we have earned and received. And that's why, at the end of the day, the concern was, could we potentially have something going on that could affect future years' revenue forecasts? And the answer is no. Verified with our independent traffic and revenue consultants, this is a single year error in the forecast. It has no bearings on any future years' forecasts. So that is really good news for us. And then, in the rest of your materials, if you scroll to page 3, the table that's provided, that's where you can see where our actual revenue being under the forecast is decreasing by $5 million, and you can see our timing differences are decreasing by $4.7 million. The other tables that we've been providing you originally in the body of your memo, they're in your attachments. So same materials that you've had in the past, we've just moved them into the attachment area. Same level of detail, but I've hit the high points for you. And so, to compare ourselves this month compared to last month, we're in a better place this month than last month. It's not that we were in a bad place last month. It's just it's better than where we were previously. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Deb. Any questions from the board members? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Deb. Again, next up, our legislative session update by Brad Ryan. I just want to say that all of our legislative folks have been very, very busy this session. It is election year, and they've been, all of them, throughout MDOT and MDTA, have done an outstanding job of keeping us up to date with everything that's going on in Annapolis. So thank you, Brad.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and board members. I'm here today to provide you with an update on this year's session of the Maryland General Assembly. There's a number of legislative efforts that specifically impact MDTA that I'd like to brief you on. It's going to be about 50-50 of ones that I presented to you last month and then ones that have been introduced since that meeting. Delegate Carr and Senator Wallstreiter have introduced legislation that would prohibit suspending the vehicle registration for vehicles that hit the $1,000 threshold of toll debt, which is established in Comar, but would still retain the ability to flag a vehicle registration for non-renewal for toll debt. MDTA is concerned that these bills could actually harm the consumer by allowing individuals to amass more toll debt, and we submitted a letter of information for the Senate bill stating that, which had a hearing last month. We will weigh in similarly on the House bill, which has a hearing on March 3rd. Delegate Healy introduced legislation which would allow MDTA to recall certain debts from the State Central Collection Unit, or CCU, and would provide the MDTA with more flexibility to work with its customers. That bill also has a hearing scheduled for March 3rd. Delegate Foley introduced legislation which would allow a customer to dispute charges to their EasyPass account within 3 years of when the charge hits the account, which is a change from the current stipulation that it be done within 120 days from when the date transaction is posted to the account. Likewise, this bill hearing is March 3rd. Delegate Corman has introduced legislation which would establish a Maryland Transit Authority. The legislation would impact the MDTA in a number of ways. It would require optimal tolling to maximize revenue. It would require a portion of this revenue to be transferred to the new rail authority. It would cap the MDTA operation and capital budgets. It restricts the MDTA's ability to issue bonds without prior approval of the rail authority and expands MDTA police jurisdiction to the facilities of the rail authority. This would result in major impacts to the MDTA and would also violate a number of provisions of the trust agreement. The bill hearing for this bill is scheduled for March the 8th. Senator McCray and Delegate Hornberger have introduced cross-filed legislation which require the MDTA to offer a range of payment options at toll facilities, authorizes the MTA to refer certain unpaid tolls and civil penalties to CCU, requires the MDTA to recall certain unpaid video tolls and penalties from the CCU, requires MDTA to waive penalties under certain circumstances, and requires the MDTA to offer a certain installment plan agreement to certain persons for the payment of certain tolls and penalties. If enacted, this legislation would have a significant fiscal and operational impact on the MDTA and would violate our trust agreement. If the civil penalties associated with these transactions are waived, the amount of outstanding debt owed to the MDTA would be reduced by as much as $45.7 million. We've had numerous productive conversations with the bill sponsor and look forward to continuing our working relationship with him. The Senate bill had a hearing last month and is awaiting further action, and the House bill has a hearing on March 3rd. Senator Hershey and Delegate Aarons have introduced cross-filed legislation which would prohibit any civil penalties from being assessed when notices of toll dues were paused for COVID or for any factors the MDTA was responsible for until 180 days after the backlog has been completed, and also requires reimbursing customers who paid civil penalties during that same time. The bill was recently introduced, and a fiscal note and a hearing date are still pending, but the legislation will result in a substantial amount of debt owed to the MDTA to be reduced, anticipated to be more than the bill previously discussed. And finally, Delegate Krim has introduced legislation which establishes a 2-year program for the payment of unpaid video tolls by Maryland residents if certain conditions are met. Among other things, the legislation requires MDTA to waive 70% of a Maryland resident's delinquent unpaid video tolls and related civil penalties that became delinquent before July 1st of this year. If enacted, toll and civil penalty debt owed to the MDTA would be reduced by $420.3 million. It is also a possibility out-of-state residents could pose legal challenges. A bill hearing is scheduled for March 3rd on this bill. We will be sure to keep you updated on these bills or any other bills that might come up that impact the agency. And with that, I would be happy to entertain any questions. And also, you met her virtually last month, but I wanted to introduce you again to Anna Dove in person on the government relations team.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Brad.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions from the members? Any legislation? Anna, good to see you again. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Continue the good work, Brad and Anna. Okay, with that, that takes us to the next order of business, which is the customer assistance plan. And that'll be a tag team of Will Pines and Deb Sharpless.
Well, good morning, Chairman and members of the board. For the record, I'm Will Pines, the Acting Executive Director for the MDTA. I'm joined today by our Chief Operating Officer, Deb Sharpless, and we are going to, like you said, tag team present on this customer assistance plan. I'm going to kick off the presentation to talk about the mechanics of the overall program, and then I'll turn it over to Deb to talk about the specifics of the financials. So, as you know, MDTA staff have been providing monthly updates to the board on customer service concerns such as long call wait times that mostly stem from the pandemic backlog of tolls, and particularly for customers without an Easy Pass. We believe that this plan delivers on the board's previous requests. Am I good? For us to bring forward solutions to alleviate long call wait times and to provide our customers more time to pay their tolls, including backlog tolls, without incurring civil penalties before the customers can pay. It also aligns with Governor Hogan's similar request for us to provide relief measures for our customers. And finally, this plan is similar to a program that we did that was a civil penalty waiver program in 2015. Okay, so what is the customer assistance plan? So the assistance plan has several main components, and it includes the following measures. First, it would immediately discontinue referrals of toll bills to Central Collections Unit and the MDOT Motor Vehicle Administration. This provides customers a grace period to spread out payments of unpaid video tolls at the customer's convenience while avoiding further escalations to MVA and CCA. And essentially, this acts as a temporary payment plan by allowing customers to stretch out toll payments over the waiver grace period, which is planned to be over 9 months. And ultimately, that would provide a period where the customer would be without worry of further consequences while they make their toll payments. The second portion of the plan establishes this civil penalty waiver grace period that waives all civil penalties for customers who pay all their unpaid tolls by midnight on November 30th, 2022. So between February 24th to midnight, November 30th, 2022, for every unpaid video toll transaction that is paid in full, the corresponding civil penalty would be waived. This plan would open up potential civil penalty waivers for payments on any outstanding video tolls during that grace period. And this would include historical tolls, things that even predated the pandemic, the pandemic backlog, which we've talked quite a bit about, and the ongoing current transactions, so any civil penalties that occur through time. However, it's important to note that this program is not a toll forgiveness program. Furthermore, toll payments are a condition for the civil penalty waivers to ensure that toll payments are made. The MDTA board has the limited statutory authority to provide waivers, whereas an elimination of tolls or free passage is prohibited by our trust agreement. Under the proposed plan, customers would remain responsible for paying their outstanding amount owed in full, with only the associated civil penalty amounts being waived during the grace period. This plan will not impact the posting of backlog tolls. The MDTA will continue posting backlog tolls into the summer of 2022, and customers who dispute liability for toll transactions may still contest their toll and/or their citation in district court. For customers who choose not to pay their video tolls before the due date on the notice, mailings of citations/civil penalties will continue during the grace period and will remain in effect if the unpaid tolls are not paid by midnight on November 30th, 2022, i.e. within the grace period. So as for a timeline for your approval, the civil penalty grace period will start today, but software changes will be necessary to allow for customers to confirm online that their penalties are being waived following the full toll payment. These changes in the software we expect would be live in mid-March, and obviously we can't start on those until we have your approval. After the civil penalty waiver grace period ends, all unpaid tolls and civil penalties are due based on the printed due dates, and toll debt referrals to CCU and MVA will resume on December 1st. The program does have a few exclusions. There will be no refunds for civil penalties already paid, or in other words, the plan is not retroactive to this board's approval. Additionally, customers who were found liable in district court will not be eligible for a waiver, along with customers who are already escalated to MVA and CCU. The third aspect of the plan is that we will work with our toll vendor to increase the number of customer service agents to reduce call and web chat wait times. We've been discussing the challenges with the call center staffing and wait times at the monthly board meetings. This plan would add funds to the vendor's contract by a modification to bring on subcontractors to assist with significantly boosting the call center resources to get the call wait times down to acceptable standards. Particularly while we close backlog processing and through the customer assistance period, this is really an important measure. This is needed to deliver on the administration's service standards for customer service, and it will be important to assist customers with understanding the customer assistance plan and their toll payment options. And the final aspect of the plan is a longer-term one for us, and that's to work with our toll vendor to explore a more long-term payment plan opportunity. Potential payment plan options would require several actions, such as getting a signed agreement with our vendor, taking that contract modification to both this board and the Board of Public Works for approval, and bringing any regulatory changes to the Administrative, Executive, and Legislative Review Committee. And due to those regulatory and statutory requirements, it is important to understand this step requires additional time for further exploration. Please also keep in mind that this customer assistance plan does not negate our ability to work with customers on a case-by-case basis to resolve their issues like we do today through our normal other means. And this is for things like toll transfers into Easy Pass accounts where customers can save on their historical tolls and receive a lower rate when they sign up for an Easy Pass on those historical transactions, and other options that we leverage to help our customers when appropriate. We're firmly committing to delivering on exceptional customer service and need to make sure that we are respectful of each customer's specific concerns. This customer assistance plan will be a big part of delivering on needed service for the majority of our customers. So now I'm going to turn it over to Deb for her to run through the financials of the program.
Thank you, Will. For the record, I'm Deb Sharpless, Chief Financial Officer for MDTA. if I could refer you to the financial takeaways that begin at the bottom of page 1. First, the temporary customer assistance plan discussed by Will is financially affordable to the agency. Second, waiving civil penalties upon payment of outstanding video tolls and suspending the escalation of accounts to MVA and CCU can be accomplished while allowing the agency to maintain its financial standards, specifically debt service coverage and unencumbered cash, for the same duration of years as previously reported in the financial forecast. Third, the net cost of the civil penalty waiver and MVA CCU components of the plan are expected to largely be offset by the overachievement of revenue I discussed a few minutes ago in Agenda Item 4. And in a few minutes, I'll discuss what I mean by net cost. And fourth, the plan offers a financial benefit to the customer service, beyond customer service, discussed by Will. That is, the plan furthers a customer's education on paying video tolls by educating the customer on paying those tolls, utilizing the Drive Easy MD website, learning about the 15% early payment discount when video tolls are paid prior to mailing, as well as the less expensive, cheaper toll payment options that are available to them. Next, if you would move to the bottom of page 2, under the summary section, staff has concluded that elements 1 and 2 of the plan are financially responsible and will allow the agency to maintain its debt service coverage of 2 times or greater, an unencumbered cash balance of $350 million for the same number of years previously reported in its financial forecast. In other words, our coverage has not shifted years. When we're in compliance, those years have not shifted. So the MVA escalations and civil penalty will not allow us or have us dip sooner than we currently have in our financial forecast, which is outside the 6-year forecast period. Based on participation levels from 2015, the civil penalty waiver program, customers could save as much as $125 million in civil penalty waivers under the plan, while encouraging payments on valid video tolls. When determining the financial implications of the estimated civil penalty waiver upon payment associated with the video toll, the net impact was analyzed, meaning that changes in revenues and expenses were analyzed, not solely revenue. Examples of factors include the current volume of civil penalties that are currently being waived for customers every day when they reach out to our call center or come to one of our centers for assistance. Also, the current below average video toll rate that we have, the avoidance of future costs such as citations and MVA process and court evidentiary packages. When these factors are accounted for, the net financial impact is approximately $27.3 million over the next 2 years. It is important to note that the net financial impact is likely conservative for a couple reasons. First, as noted during the traffic and revenue update, the current forecast reflects an overachievement of revenue. So a portion of the 27.3 in net cost is expected to be offset by that revenue. Second, because the collectability of civil penalties waived could not be readily estimated in a reliable manner, the net cost reflects the gross amount of civil penalties waived under the program based on the 2015 program. It has not been reduced by an uncollectible factor. In other words, if something would not be collected, it doesn't have any financial impact to us. Not collecting a toll that was uncollectible or waiving a toll has the zero impact. It has the exact same impact on us. Also, as stated before, the waiver grace period provides a path forward for the continued payment of tolls as customers utilize the Drive Easy MD website more and identify their toll transactions for payment, which in turn better enables customers to proactively identify future video tolls prior to the mailing of notices and receive an early payment discount. As part of this process, video toll customers may also choose to become a pay-by-plate or or Easy Pass customer, which will result in savings for both the customer and the MDTA on every trip on our facilities. The costs associated with increasing the call center and the potential future payment plan options will be negotiated with the vendor and will be included in a forthcoming modification that will come to the board. The cost for the additional staffing at the call center is being finalized, but is not expected to impact the agency's financial forecast, but may require an operating budget amendment in FY22. And the cost for the potential payment plan option would be analyzed once several of the actions identified in the board memo are completed. With that, Will and myself would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Deb and Will. And first of all, I want to say thank you to Will, Deb, and quite frankly, the entire staff, Kim Milliner, for her guidance on this issue. It's a very complex issue and that we've had to deal with, which began with COVID, as we know, and then the transition between vendors. So always, Governor Hogan's goal is the customer service and customer experience, and I think we're going to fill that obligation with this initiative if the board approves. Will, I have one question before I ask the board for other questions, but I just want to make sure we're clear. So people will see the civil penalties on their notice of toll due. However, it'll be waived on the back end especially after we have the software changes that would have to occur after the board vote, because we can't start it before the board vote. So I just want to make it clear, people will see the civil penalties on their NOTD prior to that, and they will continue to see them, but we will waive them on the back end, correct?
That's correct. So when the program, if the board approves today, the program would become effective today. And between today and March, mid-March, when the software changes would be in place, we would encourage customers to go online, pay their video tolls only, and not make payment on those civil penalties. And then when the software changes are in place, again with the board's approval, we would flush out those civil penalties that are not associated with a video toll that's unpaid.
Okay.
So again, though, any civil penalty that is tied to an unpaid video toll will continue to remain on that account until it is paid.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that's clear to the board and obviously members of the press, because I don't want, the next story to be that people are still seeing their civil penalties on their notice of toll due and creating a story around that, because we cannot make these changes until the board vote. It takes time to make these changes, and the software will update it to remove the civil penalties once the toll is paid.
That's correct.
Okay. With that, any board members have any questions? Member Von Paris?
I just have a couple of quick questions. Is that okay, Mr. Chairman?
No, I heard another voice. I didn't know
okay.
Cindy was on the line, so.
And then we see customers with, a lot of these problems with their tolling operations. After we solve their problems, what have we found to be the main issues they have, causing the customer concerns? And I guess I'll ask.
Sure, if you
Let me
want to
have-
take it first,
okay.
Jim, and then I'm
Wants to-
happy to follow up.
Sure. Member Von Paris, what we have found, I would say 4 to maybe 5 primary reasons why there are customer account problems. And that's not to say that there aren't some problems on the optics end, because obviously this equipment is mechanical and optical, and sometimes it may misread a tag, but that's very seldom that that occurs. I would say the reasons that we hear from our customer service unit is, one, an expired credit card. That's probably the top reason why we have problems with the customer's account. Two, the credit card is not on auto replenishment. And so if they don't have it on auto replenishment, they forget to replenish their funds, then it goes below zero. Three, the tags on the vehicle are not associated with their account. Now that could be that they got a new car, for example, with new tags, and they didn't update their account. It could be that the customer inputted the tag incorrectly and maybe left a digit out or a letter out. And then I would say 4, the customer's not properly mounting their Easy Pass, their transponder. If people wave them, it may not pick up. If they have it improperly installed, like above the visor, for example, we've seen cases like that. It won't pick up because the metal of the roof stops the transmission of the transponder to the gantries or the toll booth. And of course, then on the HATEM side, we have a HATEM A and HATEM B plan. And if you have the HATEM, I think it's a HATEM A plan, it is just for the HATEM bridge only. It doesn't go to other facilities. You pay the $25 and you get free passes for a year. But if you pick the other plan, it'll also allow you to go to other facilities and you have a credit card on file, or you update your account and you have payment, it won't drop below zero. But with the one plan for HATEM only, if you go through another facility, you don't have any money in your account, you fall below zero. So we're trying to encourage people that if they're going to go through other facilities to get the other plan, which allows them to do that, which they would have money on their account, and then we won't have some of those problems. But those are I would say the top 4 or 5 reasons that I did miss any, or did I miss any?
I'll pop on a couple things here, Jim.
Sure.
So, we've been working really hard to educate our customers on how tolling works, because it is complicated. The issues that Jim noted are the main things that we've been seeing, but they sort of have ancillary issues that follow it. So let me give an example. When Jim talked about expired credit cards, we have explored options for how do we engage our customers so that, if their card expired during the pandemic and they didn't get a notice right away and they didn't know their card was expired, how do we engage them to make them go in and update their card so that they are in good standing and a happy customer? We actually, with this vendor, brought in a card updater service, and that works with certain participating credit card companies, where if their only change on their card was that the expiration date migrated forward, then that card company will allow you to move it forward with them. And so we searched the database and all the participating card companies. We were able to update 17,000 expired credit cards in our system, which sounds like a lot, but we have millions of customers that use Easy Pass Maryland every day. So that, education, trying to employ every type of feature that's available to help our customers, we've been working really hard to do that.
But Will, there are many credit card companies that do not participate with that, correct?
That is correct.
And so the ones that don't participate, even though we were proactive in trying to solve a problem that was between the customer and their credit card company, some credit card companies do not allow you to do that. That's their rules, not ours. And so we can't update their credit card automatically for them.
Right. So when you have, Jim talked about when an account goes to zero, and sometimes we even see negative accounts. When that occurs, that customer's account is switched to an inactive status. So technically by the Easy Pass terms and conditions, they're no longer an Easy Pass customer. But if you have your transponder in your window and you're driving this normal, you think you are. And so you'll say, hey, I have a commuter plan. why am I seeing unused trips show up on statements? Well, if your account's not funded, you're going to get video tolls. You're not going to have those trips counted towards a commuter plan, and it kind of snowballs. So the credit card not being current is the first cause of the problem, but then we see lots of other snowballing issues that come out of it. And when customers call us, we work with them to update their accounts, to get them squared away. And in almost every circumstance, we try to work with them to give them a toll transfer, to reduce their debt down, to make them to where they can pay and just get back into good standing on their account.
And we also send notices out prior to their credit card expiring, correct?
Correct, yeah. The system has a number of automated features where if you have an expired credit card, you'll get an email if you have an email on file. If you have a negative account, you'll get a notice for that. We're adding additional notices for iTolls where they'll get a direct email. But in addition to that, we've run queries and found specific customers who have credit card concerns, have sent them an additional notice beyond the automated to try to really highlight it. And leveraging social media, doing press releases, trying to get the word out every way we possibly can.
Just last comment, if I can, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I think it's important that we provide clear, accessible, accurate information, good communication, even expand on what we have done in the past to help our customers solve some of their challenges the best we can. I know we've done it in the past and we've talked about it in the past and we've moved, but to always look to improve the communication online as much as we can so they can go and help them solve the challenges that they have. And I know the board, I'm pretty sure that others feel that way. Thank you for the...
And Member Von Paris, I think the agency does a pretty good job for the people that we do have accounts with, okay? Because in most cases, we have some of their information. Now, we may not have their email. They have to provide that email voluntarily, and then we can correspond with them that way. But otherwise, it takes a letter. We do send out notices for before your credit card expires. Many people go in and change their credit card, some don't. And that's when it becomes a problem, the ones that don't. For the video toll, we do not have their information. You know, many of them are out of state. Many of them are passing through, but they don't have an account with us. So that's a case where we video toll them. We have to go to the MVA, whether it be out of state or in state, find out who the vehicle belongs to, and send them a notice. But we don't have their information before we look it up in MVA. That's the challenge.
If I could just add one more challenge to that, again, we have millions of Easy Pass customers, but I think we have somewhere over 50,000 Facebook followers. So using social, it only has so much of an impact. We try. Since the pandemic started in 2020, we've done 16 separate press releases to provide communications updates. In 2021, we did 40 outreach events at Maryland State Fair, all over the place to try to make sure that the word is out. But it's hard. It's hard work. We're obviously going to keep doing that, doing direct engagements with our customers everywhere we can to try to make sure they understand the pandemic backlog. They understand how this program, this plan would work if approved.
Thank you. And also thank you for the excellent work you have in preparing the information so we can analyze this from a financial standpoint. Thank you.
Yes.
I think, I guess probably pointing out, obviously, as you pointed out, the pandemic has had a great effect on this program, obviously. And I guess it's been a challenge also with the vendor, getting the personnel in and or working to handle these phone calls. And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges. So where are you today as far as time-wise? I know it's been reduced, but where are you today?
Yeah, so just to map out the little bit of the history there, when we began mailings of the notices of toll due back in October of 2020, we immediately began to experience long call wait times at that point when people were receiving those pandemic backlog of tolls. That's sort of when our trouble started. That was under the old vendor. In January of 2021, we expanded our in-person service hours on Thursday afternoons and Saturdays to try to help offset, to provide some in-person coverage, but that clearly wasn't getting the numbers down enough. When we transitioned to the new vendor in April of 21, they began with 160 employees in their call center. By the time we hit August of 21, that had fallen to 60. So in a 4-month period, we lost 100 call center employees. And frankly, from that point through the fall, they've really struggled to, between attrition, people leaving and hiring and training. It takes several weeks to train folks on all of the different toll payment options and the choices that customers can make. And so bringing people on board takes time. You lose people while they're being trained. And so it's been a really tough battle. And, you know, we've all heard about the Great Resignation and all the terms that are out there that we've been challenged with internally with state employees and with our call center. So where are we now? So the vendor has made a lot of progress on adding staff. I think during the 3G presentation this afternoon, you're going to get the exact numbers. I don't have them today. We had experienced points where our call wait times were in excess of 2 hours. The most recent numbers are order of magnitude 45 minutes. So we're making great strides. But again, the hope from this plan today is that with your approval, we would bring on additional subcontractor resources to really get the call wait times down to more acceptable standards that our customers are able to get through to us and not have to wait.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, Member Carroll.
Question, but before I ask my question, I think Member Ardinger may have had a question. I think she was trying to speak up.
Member Ardinger, do you have a question?
Member Carroll, thank you. Yes. I think we kind of touched on this a little bit, but just to be precise, what would be the way of communicating this customer assistance plan to the customers?
So lots of different avenues. So number one, if this is approved today, we would immediately issue a press release that would provide the details of the program, in addition to the board materials being posted on our website for anybody to read and understand. Secondly, we do have media here today. We invited them specifically to try to get the word out about the program. We think this is great news for our customers. We've heard for a while now that they want to get the wait times down, they don't want to pay late fees, and they need more time to pay their tolls. And that's what this plan is designed to try to do. And so leveraging earned media and also social media, all the different platforms that we have will absolutely work through.
And I would also add, Member Ardinger, that obviously we'll communicate with the members of the legislature. So as they can get constituent calls or inquiries, then they can disseminate the same information to their constituencies. So we'll work through a lot of different means to get the word out.
So,
Member Carroll?
So question.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
For Will or Deb, in terms of total number of tolls in any given year, how many customers are subject to a civil penalty? Or the other way to ask the question, how many customers have a seamless experience with the tolling transaction as a percentage of total tolls?
Including Easy Pass?
Including Easy Pass.
Give me a couple minutes.
Yeah.
And I'll
Okay.
answer some other questions.
The detailed number of questions are certainly the hardest to answer.
And then secondly, in terms of a communication strategy, just to pull off of Member Ardinger's question, you guys got to do a TikTok video. If you do that, then everybody will pay attention to where we're heading in this space.
I'd have to have a TikTok account first.
There's your volunteer right there.
I'm not sure I'm ready for that.
So
Yes.
if I do have the numbers here. So to restate your question basically is, how many folks currently have essentially an unpaid civil penalty? There are an estimated 83,000 customers, and that's both people and businesses. And I emphasize that because businesses are tricky, you know.
Right.
I don't want to name a specific business, so I'm just going to say ABC Business, right? We will see ABC Business Inc., ABC Business LLC, ABC Business store services, and they're all under the same parent company, but they have multiple accounts. And so counting these is a little difficult if you want to boil it down to individuals. So that's both in-state and out-of-state, and includes people and businesses. So that's
So 83,000 relative to the millions of transactions.
That's correct. We do on average a year, we do around 150 million transactions.
So I guess my point of clarity in asking that question is that the vast majority of our customers have no customer service experience that's negative. It's a seamless experience.
That's true. I mean, you know,
I want to place the problem in perspective is what I'm attempting to do.
So when there was some questions about the pandemic and how it's impacted tolling, right? So overnight in March of 2020, we took about 15% of our customer base, those are cash paying customers. And at a time when people were wiping down their groceries and were afraid to touch things, we said, okay, we're not going to be exchanging cash with them, you know, human to human interaction while their stay-at-home orders and everything else. So we went to all electronic tolling statewide, and that 15% of our customer base immediately switched from cash to video tolls. And concurrently with that, as a financial relief measure, we were not sending them their video tolls at that time. And so that's the predominant problem. That's the core group of people that we hear the most from. There are Easy Pass customers that incurred video tolls due to issues like their expired credit cards, et cetera, that we hear from as well. But the program that's being presented today really benefits all video toll customers. The average Easy Pass customer that didn't have they had their transponder mounted, their credit card was funded, they have auto replenishment, all those kind of things, we're not typically hearing from them.
Yeah, I just want to expand on that just a little bit with what Will said, because I think it's really important to understand why we're here, why we have a backlog. And, you know, there's a lot of things being thrown out there by the press, but let me make it a little clearer. So Will had mentioned before that we had a plan to go to all electronic tolling. It was a plan that was going to go out through about 2027, okay? But due to COVID, we immediately, at the flick of a switch, had to go to all electronic tolling. And that was one, to protect our toll collectors, and also, importantly, not to spread the disease through hand-to-hand touch to hundreds of thousands of people each and every day, right? So it was a health protection measure that we had to go, as Will said, from our cash customers to a video toll. Now, we didn't think as an agency that it was fair to, at the flick of a switch, go to all electronic tolling and charge all those people who were normally paying $4 a day and charge them $6 because it was out of their control. The pandemic was out of their control, it was out of our control.
Right.
Nobody knew it was coming, nobody asked for it, we had to deal with it. So immediately, we ended up with a backlog because we were not prepared to take the influx of the amount of video tolls that we were incurring versus the amount of cash tolls that we normally occurred each and every day. We also had to pause that for a few reasons. One, to make sure that we weren't charging customers $6 and only charge them the regular cash rate of $4, we had to work with our vendor, by the way, that we were in transition with, to change their software system so they wouldn't overcharge the normal cash customers. Now, many of them were already video toll customers. About 2 to 4% were already video toll customers. We kind of, as an agency, had to eat that because we couldn't determine who was cash and who was video. And then, of course, people were losing their jobs, getting their hours reduced by their employers because of the pandemic. And we paused them also so that we could determine who used to be a commuter rate is not commuting anymore. We didn't want to hurt those customers. And so as we listen to the customers and tell us, I don't need the commuter rate anymore, we'll flip it to the other regular Easy Pass and stuff, all those factors came into play overnight. And that's what started the backlog. Then, of course, as I mentioned, we were in transition from our old vendor to our new vendor. And during that transfer, that transfer of information, the transfer of software, there was also periods where we had to stop sending the NOTDs, and that created some of the backlog. So I just want to be clear why we were here, but it was primarily because of COVID and the fact that we had to stop providing cash opportunities and go to all video, and we did not want to hurt our customers. That's why we're here. Now, because of the transition, we had to wait until the new vendor was fully up and running before they could even start beginning to send out notices of toll due. But we made every effort, as Will said, to work with the press, put out press release, which you say was 19? 16 press releases, numerous video camera interviews, and working with the elected officials, et cetera. And so, understanding again that it's not the customer's fault. We didn't ask for COVID. We're here today with another issue to bring before you to help the customer experience. And we believe that this issue may help the customers who are still in a backlog situation. I also want to clarify one other thing. You know, you see a lot of times in the press that people say they only had 30 days to pay, but we had sent out notices 60, 90, sometimes 120 days ahead of time, reminding them that they had these tolls to pay. So they had all that time to pay. Many, as you mentioned, most of our customers did. Some of them didn't take the opportunity to do that, and then they only had 30 days. So some of it is how it's being reported, but we have made every effort, really, to try and help our customers as we work through this situation.
Member Carey, to answer your question, 95 roughly percentage of all of our customers pay, you know, without ever having a civil penalty. You know, if you count Easy Pass, all the video toll customers that pay their notice of toll due prior to the due date, it's about 95%. Now that percentage prior to AET was even higher than that, like because 98. Video was such a small percentage of our customers. And I think we talked is also that with COVID and you know, trying to do the right thing with not mailing notices and all that, people have been slower moving over to Easy Pass. So, you know, Easy Pass, we believe, will continue to increase, and therefore that percentage will increase as well.
Thanks, Deb. So 95% of 150 million-ish falls on any given year of seamless transactions.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And as Deb said, before COVID, I believe it's around 98%, wasn't it, Deb?
Yes.
It was around 98%. Now, keep in mind that in that 2 to 5% now, many of those are out of state. So yes. We just had to keep that as a reference also. Member Rosen.
So just point of clarification, maybe for Deb. So the $27.3 million over 2 years, so that is net of the additional call center cost, because you said we still have to negotiate that.
That's right.
Cost, but so we'd have an estimate in there that's part of that 27.
No, the additional cost associated with the call center is not part of the $27.3 million. The $27.3 million, it's largely the civil penalty waiver piece. And so when you know, first assuming the 2015 participation rate, which, you know, that was our starting point for potential civil penalties that could be waived. That's also assuming civil penalties that haven't even been issued yet, right? Because there's NOTDs that are out there have never even escalated to citations. at this point. We reduced that by the percentage of total civil penalties that are being waived, over the last, 6 months. Then we reduced it, well, we increased it because it's a revenue impact, where our video toll payment rate is a little bit lower than historically where we've been. And so with the civil penalties, we believe this program will bring the payment rate of NOTDs back up where we historically been. And the reason for that is, we have events like COVID that has happened, but generally in the population, you've got a very large group of the population that pays their bills and wants to do the right thing and takes that responsibility. And then you have a smaller percentage that does not, and with our payment rate being different, how our population is and who are the individuals that want to do the right thing and pay their bills, that hasn't changed. That's a constant for us. It's all these other events that have come into play, and this program, we believe, will help us return ourselves to historical payment rates for notices. And then the last part of the calculation is avoidance of cost. You get back to your historical payment rate. You don't have the human certification of citations. Every citation that goes out, an individual, not a computer, certifies that license plate, certifies that image. They're actually looking at it. You avoid that labor cost. Producing the citation, mailing it, court costs. So there's costs that when we give, this additional opportunity for people to pay video tolls without having the civil penalty, there's avoidance of costs. So the $27.3 million considers all those factors, because for our financial coverage, it's always the net number. Our revenues less our expenses.
If I could just add one point, we've been presenting at the last several monthly meetings about the modification that's planned for our two vendors to account for the fact that the original contracts had contemplated cash collection and not all electronic tolling in the environment that we have. So we have modifications that are very near to come into the board, and these call center numbers will be incorporated into that, and you'll get the full picture of the pricing at that point.
Okay, so that's what I was getting at, because I imagine that's not an insignificant cost for the CSRs, and basically if the plan is to increase the number of call center CSRs to reduce wait times until call and web chat volumes normalize and acceptable wait times can be maintained, we're coming up with an assumption for that, and I guess we have to probably define what is normal and what is acceptable. Presumably when when a lot of this backlog gets handled, that will be normal and acceptable, certainly less than 45 minutes, but that's certainly better than over an hour where we were.
Right.
But it would be good to understand in the future what is our customer acceptability in terms of what do we want to achieve there in the call center.
We have the KPIs. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Will.
so a couple of points. Pre-pandemic, before we had these challenges, our average wait times were 2.5 minutes. And so we've asked our vendor, we have key performance indicators in the contract. We've asked them to tell us what staffing levels are needed to both get us back to those kinds of numbers. Now, will it be 5 minutes? Will it be 10 minutes? It's going to take time. They're not going to be able to train 100 people overnight and have them all in place and it run perfectly and have zero attrition from here on. It's going to be a build up to get to a point where the call numbers decline, but they're bringing in additional separate resources to help make that go a lot faster than what we've seen in the past. We've asked them, we want compliance with the KPIs, but there is a backlog too. When we get an email from a customer, it takes us longer to respond than what would be a typical fashion. So we've got to work that list down and get everything kind of back to normal operation, which we expect will be needed through this entire grace period. We want to make sure that as customers are calling to get an understanding of what is this program. I saw something on the website. We're gonna, when they go to pay their toll, they'll have a pop-up that'll come and explain the program. They can click a link to take them to frequently asked questions. But if they still have further questions, many people are going to call and try to get a greater understanding about this. So we've asked our vendor to ramp up to get us to normal, with the understanding that the complexity of what we're bringing here is actually going to make things a little harder for a period.
And to Member Rosen, I mean, we have a number of what this will cost roughly, and we know that from a affordability financial forecast perspective, it's not going to move the needle very much. But as we've stated, like we're still having those conversations. We're still talking about those costs and negotiating those costs, and so that's
We don't want to throw out a number publicly when we're in negotiations.
Sure. Absolutely, and I'm not asking.
That's the key.
When that plan does come through, net of all the benefits we're going to reap as well, because of not having cash tolling. That's basically what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I also want to say that, look, we've been trying to increase the numbers of the call center, as Will said, for many months, right? Some of it, some of the reduction was due to COVID, people getting COVID, or people being near people who had COVID and not being able to show up. And then some of it was the federal funds for unemployment, that people chose to leave their job and get the federal income along with the state income. So there have been many challenges. However, it's my understanding that now there was a group that was working with the health industry through some of the COVID stuff, and they've been doing customer service for quite a while. That contract is ending, and so it's a great, well-trained group that we can grab hold of to help us boost our numbers immediately. So that's really kind of how it's working. So it was a good find on our part.
Well,
Any other questions from the board, or?
employees, virtual.
Just one other point too. When the contract was contemplated, we had a strong focus on hiring in Maryland and having our call center be located in Maryland. With the pandemic, one of the downsides to that has been that when folks are call out sick, we didn't have in the contract an option for remote service with the call center. And that's not like your normal remote work, because we have payment card requirements, there's PCI compliance. If you take somebody's credit card, you have certain obligations to protect their information. And so remote working for our call center staff is kind of a complex issue, but we have been working with the vendor to expand that capability as a mitigation strategy for when folks have to quarantine due to pandemic illness. So, just wanted to add that.
Okay. Any other questions from the board members? All right. Just so we're clear, I want to make sure that I read what we're actually going to potentially vote on. It's immediately discontinuing the escalation of unpaid tolls and civil penalties to CCU and MDTA, Motor Vehicles Administration, through from now, the 24th, through November 30th, 2022, to provide for customers to pay unpaid tolls without the worry of further consequences. Providing a grace period for civil penalty waivers when customers pay their unpaid video tolls by midnight, November 30th, 2022. Increasing the number of call center CSRs to reduce wait times until the call and web chat volumes normalize, as Will just said, and acceptable wait times can be maintained. And 4, exploring a potential payment plan option for future deployment. And as Will had mentioned earlier, there's a lot of things we have to go through for that to occur. So with that, I will entertain a motion from the board.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded for approval. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will take the vote. All members in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Okay. So the next order of business is the approval for our quarterly review and investment strategy performance, approval of to continue with the current investment strategy, and that'll be given by Alan Garman.
Thank you. This is our quarterly update on trailing 12-month performance.
Alan, before you begin, I just want to mention, I have to step out for a moment. Sean Powell will act as chairman while I'm gone.
As Jim mentioned, for the record, Sean Powell, acting chairman for the board. So I'll continue, sir.
Thank you.
Find my glasses.
This is our quarterly update to the board on investment strategy and performance. It's helpful to understand that we provide this report in much greater detail at the investment committee level and then at the finance committee, and we're hitting it on a high level to the full board. We're seeking approval to maintain the existing strategy for the upcoming quarter, and that existing strategy was recommended by the Finance Committee at the February 8th meeting. There are a few key points that we try to hit each quarter, and they're really, firstly, is that the investments adhere to policy, investment policy, and then secondly, the board should be looking for strategy adhering to the board-approved strategy. So essentially, the investment structure was in line with the strategy that the board approved. And I think that's evidenced by the adherence, the performance, the total return performance for the general account was in line with the benchmark index. So in terms of the types of strategies, we employ two major strategies, either a matched funding approach or a total return approach. So for our capital accounts, our operating accounts, and our debt service accounts, we're essentially matching investment maturities to the known or potential cash outflows. For our longer term reserves, the M&O reserve and the general account, we take a total return approach. So we've essentially weighed the risk-return trade-off of a longer-term maturity structure, and the risk is essentially volatility of those returns over multi-year periods. But from a total return perspective, essentially you're accepting that volatility in exchange for higher expected average annual returns. So for the general account, the duration is approximately 3, and our portfolio is structured with maturities essentially between 1 and 5 years, and that's in line with the benchmark index, which is a 1 to 5 year agency benchmark index. The M&O reserve is benchmarked against a 1 to 13 year treasury index, and the investments are structured essentially from 6 months out to 15 years. And the average duration is approximately 7. As a bit of history on the M&O reserve, that portfolio had a benchmark that was the same as the general account. Just prior to the pandemic, we recommended an extension to a longer benchmark for that portfolio. The board approved that, but then the pandemic hit, interest rates fell to record all-time lows, and we held off on that transition. We didn't want to reposition the full $50 million portfolio at record low interest rates. So we began implementation in December of 20. So as the pandemic progressed and things were looking a little bit more optimistic, we began that transition, and it's now completed. And so our monthly returns are now in line with that new benchmark, but the trailing 12-month return is significantly different because we were much shorter than the old benchmark during most of that trailing 12-month period. So going forward, you'll see just monthly returns in line with the new benchmark, but we're going to need about 12 months to pass until we're in line on trailing 12-month returns.
So in terms of relative returns and benchmarking, the general account's total return performance for the trailing 12 months was negative 1.0%, and that was very much in line with the index's return of negative 1.13%. And that's essentially associated with the mark-to-market price changes in the bond market. Interest rates have been rising very quickly as we've come out of the pandemic, and as inflation has picked up. The Fed's expected to begin hiking this year. They've already announced a slowdown in their bond purchases, and they expect to terminate that completely in March. So that was the accommodative easing, essentially, that they were doing, monetary policy. The M&O reserve, its return over the trailing 12 months was negative 0.96%, which was quite a bit closer to the old benchmark because, again, that portfolio was mostly in line with the old benchmark for the majority of the year. The new benchmark's return was negative 2.27%. I think, lastly, I would say is that the board-approved strategy is focused on a multi-year return perspective. So over the last trailing 5 years, the returns have been about 2% on average. So the cumulative return is about 11%. So that's really the focus, and we're dealing with a rising rate environment and these negative returns currently. The last negative return for the portfolio is back in 2013, and you might recall the taper tantrum, it was termed, was when the Fed was talking about raising rates, and so interest rates rose very quickly, bond prices fell, and that's why you had the negative returns. So I think our recommendation at this point is a continuation of the current investment strategy, and I would like to open it for questions.
Thank you, Alan. Do we have any questions for Alan?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the continuation of the investment strategy.
Okay, motion by Member Rosen. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Oh, I had a tie here. I'll tell you what, I'll go with Member Ensert. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, Alan, looks like you're up for the next two as well.
Great.
So the next one is Board Resolution 2201, authorizing PFC-backed debt refinancing.
Thank you. These two resolutions are sort of companion pieces, so I won't have to repeat the same information twice, and so I'll try to hit it on a summary level for expediency. So we're seeking delegated authority from both of these resolutions to pursue financings. So for the first resolution, this is a PFC bonds financing. So these are bonds that are not secured by the MDTA's toll revenues. They're secured by passenger facility charge revenues from BWI Airport. So as a conduit or non-recourse issuer, we issue certain bonds for entities like the Maryland Aviation Administration. This is a refinancing of bonds that were issued in 2012 for economic savings. There's bonds outstanding in 3 different series. We're primarily focused on the A and the B series. One of the series is currently callable. The other series will be callable this coming June 1st. And under IRS rules, we can issue a current refunding bonds up to 90 days before that call date. So we're trying to capture the lower rate environment now to lock in those savings until the final maturity. I had included amortization tables in here that show you, highlighted in yellow, the remaining maturities for each series. So if you looked at the first table, it's for the series 2012 A bonds. You can see those remaining maturities highlighted in yellow, and you can see the associated coupons in the column immediately next to that. I hit some bullets here that I'd like to review, which is really the key points is that the call dates for the 3 series are either they're currently callable or will be callable very soon on June 1st. The combined par of those 3 series is $111 million. The internal rate of return, or essentially the cost of those bonds to their maturity date, is 4.45% for the Series A bonds and 2.52% for the Series B bonds. Series B have much lower couponing. So we've modeled some refinancing at around 2%. So that equates to expected savings as a percent of par of around 7%. And that's about $5.2 million that would be realized over the remaining life of those individual maturities. We're expecting we'd need about 60 days to come to market, so potential sale date would be scheduled for early May. With all of our resolutions, we're required to have limiting provisions in them. So the par amount is a limiting provision at $130 million. We expect to issue probably less than the $111 million. We may be able to pull out a slight amount of money from the reserve, but we typically give some flexibility in the sizing of that delegated authority for unforeseen circumstances. The final maturity date is really limited by IRS regulations, so they can't exceed the original maturity of those bonds. And then the bond sale date would have to occur by the end of this year. But again, we really want to get it done in the next 60 days. You know, rates are rising. The faster we can get it done, the better, essentially. And then we're required to come back to the board at the first meeting immediately following the sale to provide an update. One final point is that one of the series is in variable rate mode, and it's a very low-cost financing means over the long term, but we just would like the opportunity to look at that again. In the rising rate environment, it may be beneficial to fix the rate on the bonds. I'm not necessarily in that camp. I think it may be good to just keep them in variable rate mode, but we at least want that flexibility to look at that with MDOT and MAA and make a decision and run some analysis.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the important things, and Alan talks about MDOT and MAA. You know, one of our responsibilities under statute is we're a financing arm for transportation projects. And so, you know, we look at this money as it's MDOT's money. It's, you know, they're managing their debt. You know, we have this dedicated revenue source, but MDOT has come to us, asked us to do this refunding. And that's why we're sitting here today. Now, based on the factors that Alan highlighted, the savings, you know, we would be making the same decision, you know, if this was our money. But I think it's important to note that they have asked us to do this refunding.
Thank you, Deb and Alan. Questions for the team over there? Okay, hearing none. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve Board Resolution 22-01, authorizing PFC backed debt refinancing.
So moved.
Oh, got member again, Jimmy, and member Carroll in the second. A little slower than him today. That's okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Board Resolution 22-02 is up next. Alan?
Great,
And Deb?
thank you. Yes, again, this is similar to the prior resolution. We're seeking board delegated authority to pursue a financing. This financing is both a refinancing of the Series 2012 bonds. These are toll revenue backed debt that are coming up to a 10-year call on July 1st. So we have about 39 million of that outstanding. And we'd also like the ability to consider pulling forward some financing needs in the future in the rising rate environment, so flexibility there. So the total sizing is 250 million. A little bit more detail on the Series 2012 bonds. That issue was originally about 67 million. There's about 43 million outstanding, and so we'll need to make this upcoming principal payment, and then those remaining maturities of 39 million are again shown on this table on the second or third page. You'll see that the couponing of those in the second column is significantly higher than prevailing interest rates. And to return to the bullets on the second page, the call date is again July 1st. The call date true interest cost, so essentially the discount rate or the single discount rate that equates all of those future cash flows over the next few years, equates to 3.67%. So that's effectively our interest cost to maturity. We can call them on July 1 at par and pay 3.67, Or we've modeled a refinancing savings now so we can refinance around 1.05%. So that would be savings of about 9% of par. On a nominal basis, that's about $4 million over the next few years. Like the PFC financing, we need about 60 days to accomplish it. So we think we could be done or have a potential sale in late April or early May. Limiting provisions in this resolution are par amount limited to $250 million. We must generate net present value savings of at least $1 million. The final maturity of the refunding portion would be limited to the maturity structure of the existing bonds, and we must accomplish this bond sale by December 31st, and we have to come back to the board at the first board meeting after the sale and report on results.
Any questions for Alan or Deb? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve Board Resolution 22-02, authorizing toll revenue-backed debt refinancing and financing new projects.
So moved.
Okay, you got Member Gaines with the motion.
Second.
Member Rosen with the second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have procurement update, procurement report on open contracts. Obviously, he's not Donna.
This is Jeff Davis,
Hi, Jeff. How are you?
Deputy Director of Procurement. We let Donna have a little vacation.
We interact quite often on our bi-weekly BPW calls. It's good to actually see a face as opposed to a
blip on a screen.
Yeah. So, sir, proceed.
Good morning, Chairman, good morning, members. My name is Jeff Davis with the Division of Procurement. I'm here on behalf of Ryan Servo to present our open contract report. So she gave me a brief rundown of what I should cover with you, and then if you have any questions, I can answer them for you. So currently, the MDTA has 232 open contracts that consists of 14 MOUs, 76 A&E contracts, 58 construction contracts, 25 maintenance contracts, 28 services contracts, and 31 IT contracts. The total contract amount for all of those is $3,406,643,652.63. Of that total amount, so far to date, we have purchase orders totaling $2,961,765,483.99. Of those purchase orders, we have vouchered to date $1,824,116,385.92. The remaining encumbered funds on those purchase orders is $1,137,649,649,649,098.07. And the remaining balances on our contracts that are not currently encumbered is $440,878,168.64. So I just threw a lot of numbers there at you, but if anyone had any questions or need me to repeat anything, please go ahead.
I have a serious, I'm just kidding.
And obviously, these many of these contracts are multi-year contracts.
Any questions for Jeff, or he can send a bunch back to Donna if you have. Okay, great. Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Next up,
Thanks.
calling in on the telecommuting here is Member Gaines for the Human Resources Committee report. Sir, take it away.
All right. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
I wish I was there with you.
Where is he, in the island still there?
I'm sure he's someplace warm.
Yeah, he's suffering, yeah.
The Office of Human Resources and Workplace Development has had a very busy quarter, as they always do, under the capable leadership of Tanya Dorsey. And we learned about that at our meeting of February 24. Heard about a new training program developed to educate MDTA employees about Easy Pass. Just help everyone get a little bit more expertise in it because we're all asked about it, including board members. So this was a little specific training for them to everyone help educate the general public. Receive an update on the career development program, which is really our continuing education program, and that got halted due to COVID issues, and we relaunched that recently and executed memorandums of understanding with Stevenson University, University of Maryland Global Campus, and Morgan State University. It's going well. Interestingly, University of Maryland gets 62% of our enrollees, and we have a fair number of enrollees right now. That's good. We heard about a new program, the My Maryland Cares program, which provides employees and their dependents with a no-cost, confidential mental health and emotional well-being services. We've heard a lot about how kids in school are really having a lot of problems mentally, but it doesn't stop there. I mean, a lot of people, it's been a different lifestyle for a lot, and imagine you're being a parent, an MDTA employee, or a parent, all of a sudden you got to teach your kids or supervise them in school every day. So it has to be stressful. So we heard about that program. I think it's off to a good start. We heard once again about the toll collection employee updates. I think we still have 46 toll collection employees of various levels, including supervisors and the actual toll collectors themselves. I think they've been filling in all over the place, and some are actually getting close to retirement. But I think that's it's just something we're monitoring. I think it's trying to take care of our people, and I think we've done a very good job of that. The recruitment and examinations unit has been very busy because I think they've been missing people, and then of course they're charged with the hiring. So I think beginning of the year there were 247 open positions, and we filled about 119 of them. So there's more to do, but they're doing a nice job. We heard about the employee services and programs program, which it tracks all the issues employees have, and of course a big one was the COVID-19 leave and testing and all that, which seemed to change every few months. I don't know about for us, but in the rest of the world it changed every few months, it seems. So we were having to stay on top of that, and I think it went pretty well. And then lastly, we got a classification and compensation update on giving us a detailed summary of salary actions that impacted our staff, and that included bonuses offered by the governor, and COLAs and step increases. So that's very detailed, and it was good to hear about that. And that's about all I have. Any questions?
Thank you, Member Gaines. Everyone at the table's hand is up to ask you a question, so.
Okay, good. I'm ready. Get ready, Tanya.
No, just kidding. Do we have any questions for Member Gaines as he's tanning up?
Keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir. Excellent report. We look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you.
Okay, next up.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you, sir. Next up, third generation electronic toll collection current operations update, Joseph Quattrone.
Thank you.
Welcome, sir.
Hi, thank you. My name is Joe Quattrone, ETC Program Manager. I'm going to refer to the deck material. It's nice seeing everybody in person, by the way. I'm going to refer to the deck material and just go through the slides here, starting on slide 2. We've mentioned this like in previous updates, but as far as the schedule update goes, the vendor, the back office vendor, has implemented 13 software releases in an agile sprint cycle, which is releases every 2 weeks. They have one more release before system acceptance test, but with the waiver program that was just mentioned, there will be a release just for the waiver program. So after, the 14th release, there will be the waiver program release. That will kind of run in parallel with our system acceptance test for the back office. That'll be a 30-day evaluation of the system. They're on track with that. They're on track to start that process in the March timeframe. MDTA is preparing for that evaluation. We'll talk more about that on some additional slides here. The only other thing to mention here on this slide is that the modifications that require board approval, DO-IT and BPW approval is still being negotiated. The waiver was added to the mod. Now that it's been approved, it can move forward with that portion of the mod. Other things in the mod include a no-cost time extension for the schedule portion of the mod, and revising liquidated damages to the back office contract to provide accountability to the schedule. When we say that, they have been accountable to the schedule so far, stayed right on track with the 13 releases up to now. And then there's also updates for the COVID backlog and AET revisions. So that's it for slide 2 on the schedule update. I'll move to slide 3. Okay, so slide 3 is key focus areas, and these also have been touched on in previous meetings here. Our lane maintenance improvements, the quality assurance, quality control, lane maintenance improvements, they're on track. Nice. We have 2 AET conversions remaining. Nice being one, and that's still on track for mid-March. FMT lane closures have been announced. That's the one that will follow. Nice. We've announced the lane closures for that, and that looks like a late summer conversion to AET for FMT. We haven't finalized that schedule yet. We're still working through that, but right now it looks like late summer is a good indication of where that's going to land. We're also holding, the vendors accountable for timely resolution of issues that we identify along the way, enforcing contractual requirements, and emphasizing a proactive approach to maintenance tasks and fine-tuning the system as we go. Some of the things we've done recently with the software releases, we mentioned last month that we're making IVR, interactive voice response improvements, trying to simplify those commands. And we meet weekly on streamlining the IVR system so we can, have customers self-service themselves rather than getting to a live representative on the phone. And we've seen an uptick in IVR calls handled. So the next slide I'll talk a little bit more about that. We also made some improvements to some of our large fleet accounts, super user accounts we call them. They were timing out, because when these large accounts could have up to 2 million transactions in 1 month. So if they're on the system and they say, give me 3 months worth of data at 2 million a month, that's 6 million transactions they're trying to have the system generate. And most systems will choke up on a query of that size. So we've put parameters in place to help them select, parameters that's going to work. It's going to return results for them. These are mainly for large fleet accounts. So we've made some significant improvements in that area. We're also always looking to improve the website, always adding hints and instructions. With this release, we've made improvements to the PIN and password reset, which has been, sometimes an issue to reset your PIN and password. We've made some improvements there that the customer is not required to remember their PIN. So there's other ways they can get into their account without knowing their PIN number. So those are just a couple things as far as software improvements we've made and we'll continue to make. The next three key focus areas are kind of lumped together: software reports and documentation, system acceptance and key performance indicators, and the contract admin and operational functions. These are lumped together because they're all in advance of our system acceptance test, which is going to be in the mid-March timeframe. So we need reports ready, we need the documentation ready, we need our key performance indicators we need to be in alignment with how the KPIs are being calculated, and we're working through all that ahead of our system acceptance test evaluation timeframe. And then at the same time, when we get into operation and maintenance and they get through system acceptance, they will be in an O&M mode after, of course, the punch list after the punch list will occur after system acceptance, where they'll resolve anything that we find in the evaluation timeframe. We'll be standing up our O&M functions. So that would be IT operations and finance functions, making sure all the tools and processes to validate and audit both the lane side and the back office is in place. So that is it for this slide. Anybody can stop me anytime they have a question. I'll move to slide 4 now. The post-go-live risk tracking. We've been also tracking the call center metrics on a daily basis. There's been, further improvement. Will touched on this in his waiver program comments. But what this table shows you, it's a December, January, and February review of where we started in December with 100 agents answering phones. We bumped that up to 157 in January, and as of today, there's 206. So this 163 was month to date as of 2/13. So they've increased it, beyond what's shown here. So as we see, more agents being added, we see our call wait times reducing. That's the third row. You'll see in December it was 101 minutes, and then in January when we added more staff, it went to 65 minutes, and now for February month to date, it's 45 minutes. So, it's to us, it's directly correlated to people not calling out sick because of COVID, which is the second row. If you look at the second row, the call-outs, that was all COVID protocol call-outs, or people just being sick in general. In December, it was 26%. In January, we're at 34%. That's when COVID was peaking. So even though you might have 157 reps, you subtract 34% from that, you're only looking at 118 reps available to answer calls. You'll see in February, we're down to 10% people calling out. So, that is a huge help to have more people available to answer calls. Now, I mentioned IVR. IVR stats indicate that more calls are being handled through the IVR, so there's no need to talk to a rep. IVR stats. If you look at the fourth row, this is not IVR. These are actual calls to the call center people. There was 168,000 in December. That's still the number one reason for the call is the backlog. NOTDs that they're receiving. But you'll see it reduced in January to about 150,000 calls that were queued to the customer service reps. But what we noticed in the month of January was that the IVR handled more. So IVR handled about 13,000 more than they did the month before. They were handled without having to go to the call center. So I'm hoping this trend continues, that more things are handled by the IVR. Our call volumes will get less. But with adding staff, even with the waiver program, we're hoping that we can keep reducing the call wait times. Let's see. So the only other thing I wanted to add on this slide is that, by current projections, we'll have 246 reps available by the end of the month. So we have about 60 in training right now that will be released to answer calls at the end of the month. The only caveat is that, TransCore is kind of putting like a 22% attrition rate. So, people leaving the job once they're hired and trained. So they're constantly in a training cycle, bringing people in to account for the people that might leave. So it's an ongoing, issue. Okay, so I think I covered what I wanted to cover on slide 4. You guys can always, ask me questions as I go. All right, last slide. Okay.
Let me go back.
Yes, sir.
Chairman, let me go back to the number in December. I think where a lot of the problem was prior to December, where they only had like 60 or 70 reps covering it, and that's when you had that 2-hour wait or
yes, sir.
Or whatever. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Will touched on that. We went live with 160 reps, on May 1st, and then 3 or 4 months later, we were down to 60. People just, for whatever reason, they left in droves. And then they've been trying to, ramp up, and then COVID kind of hit and made that even more difficult. But we are expanding on this remote rep, this work from home option. So I feel like we're doing what we can to compensate for the unknowns going forward, another outbreak or whatever.
And Joe, if I can add something.
Sure.
With chairing the IAG and the Executive Management Committee, I have the opportunity to interact with many toll agencies on a regular basis, and with very, very few exceptions, that staffing call centers, I hear it over and over again, and it doesn't matter what vendor it is, they're really struggling with having staff, and we met, we had a meeting earlier this month, and, just when we break for lunch, three agencies were talking about our wait times, and it's their number one concern, and they're doing everything they can. One of the agencies that has, is doing well, and actually TransCore is their back office provider. Remote work. 50% of their staff is remote work, and they had said it took a while to be able to get that in place and to do it in a manner that's PCI compliant and stuff like that. And you see us on that path as well. To try to repeat, what others have done that's been successful. Now, I cannot speak to, call centers outside of tolling. Unfortunately, I'm not knowledgeable about those call centers, but this is, it's a struggle right now for everybody, including the toll agencies that do not have anything unique going on, right? Call our AET conversions, our backlog, our transition, right? That's unique. That's challenges that our call center staff is facing, that other call centers that are really struggling with really long wait times too, they're in a business as normal operations and they're having similar experiences.
No, I think you're right, though, because if you call a credit card company or a lot of other other companies that you want to check on your account, you're having a long wait. And I just want to bring that out. I don't think, it's been brought out enough that the struggle that you had before and, obviously catching up now, but people don't understand it. I don't think the public really grasps, what we've gone through.
And I mention this because, the vendor is making, every effort. And even like when we talk about attrition rates, right? They make assumptions about higher attrition rates just to kind of like pad that a little bit because it means that they're onboarding more. If they have a lower attrition rate, great. It means they have more staff, but they're planning for the worst because it brings in greater staff. But that doesn't negate what we need to do, like, the customer assistance program, bringing in even more staff. So I mentioned the other call centers that are struggling, not to, by any means to be an excuse for us in our performance. It is just that it is a problem that many are fighting. And, one of our strategies is this customer assistance plan. And that's the reason, we still have a responsibility regardless of the struggle that we're having or anybody else is having.
Okay, so we have one more slide, slide 5. Slide 5 talks about post-go live risk tracking. If we start with transaction and backlog processing, we're making steady progress on this month to month. For video transactions, we're up to about 46.8 million video transactions that have been posted to customer accounts. So 46.8 this month. It's up from 37.8 last month that we reported on. Once they post the accounts, the customer has approximately 60 days where they can pay online to receive the 15% discount. Of that 46.8 million video transactions, it includes both current transactions and backlog video transactions. So it's a combination back and forth. We are metering these out at about 35,000 envelopes a day, with just over 3 transactions per each envelope. So they get posted. The 60 days to pay online to receive their discount. If they don't pay within that time, they won't receive the discount because it will require MDTA to mail that and incur the cost of mailing. As of February 15th, we're up to 21.6 million NOTD transactions mailed to customers, and that's about 3 million more than last month. So we had somewhere around 18.3 last month. We've mailed out an additional 3 million this month, so we're up to 21.6 million notice of toll due transactions mailed to customers. Overall, we're at 99% complete on EasyPass transponder-based backlog processing. So almost there. That equates to about 18.4 million transactions that have been sent to the back office. And then for video backlog, we're at 85% complete. That equates to about 24.3 million transactions sent to the back office. And this information is fresh off the press today. That's our current backlog numbers effective today. So 99% complete for the EasyPass transponder backlog and 85% complete on video backlog. So we're making good progress getting through that.
So customers, particularly the ICC, will see fewer and fewer transactions posting to their accounts today, their current accounts. from these transactions that have occurred over the past, year plus.
Yeah, that is the number one reason why they're calling, as we say every month, I think, here. So once we get through that, hopefully the calls will reduce. Anybody have any questions? Because I'm done with the presentation.
Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
Any questions? Very thorough report. We appreciate it. Okay, next up, we have the Chief of Staff, Ms. Mary O'Keefe, pinch hitting for the Executive Director report. So, Mary, welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Board. For the record, I'm Mary O'Keefe, Chief of Staff, filling in for Will Pines, and will report the Executive Director report's remarks on his behalf. I want to start off by introducing to the Board our Acting Chief Operating Officer, Joey Sagal, over here.
Welcome,
We're pleased
Joey.
that Joey has come on board. Joey joined the MDTA team on February 9th. And he's coming from State Highway Administration, where he most recently served as Deputy Administrator, Chief Engineer of Operations. He has more than 24 years of experience in transportation operations and has worn many different hats at SHA and Federal Highway Administration. Joey has served in many leadership roles nationally, like serving on AASHTO's Committee for Transportation Systems Operations, as well as the Transportation Research Board. Joey has completed many leadership programs, including the AASHTO National Leadership Institute, UMD, University of Maryland, is that right, Joey? Operations Academy Senior Management Program, UMUC Leadership Development Program, and the University of Baltimore Schaefer Center for Public Policy Certified Public Manager Program. He also serves in the Volunteer Fire EMS Service for over 26 years and is past Chief Fire Officer in Baltimore County, Maryland. And he has a BS in Public Administration from Columbia Southern University. So we're all pleased to have Joey join the MDTA family.
And Joey, you just can't escape me,
I can't distract from Jeremy.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And Joey has a vast knowledge of movie quotes, too. Just for the MDTA team, just try to quiz him from time to time. He's pretty good.
Make note of that. Since the January meeting, Will has been continuing to make outreach to the elected officials in the General Assembly regarding the MDTA-related legislation that Brad discussed earlier, and these efforts will continue as long as the legislature is in session. And I don't think Brad mentioned, I think today's the halfway point. I'd have to be fact-checked on that, but I think we're there. Yeah. As Will mentioned at the January meeting, and he made mention of it this meeting, our Division of Communications also has worked with our EasyPass operations to develop that New Year's email that went out to more than a million EasyPass customers who we had an email address for, to help them start the year off right, to help them get the lowest toll rate possible. Well, we're continuing that. In February, we continued with a similar notification that had a Valentine's Day theme. And again, reinforcing where we can to our EasyPass customers, asking them to follow some of those best practices that the Secretary also mentioned about having the valid credit card or a bank account on file. We are making sure that they have the transponder properly mounted, license plates up to date, also how to avoid those image tolls. And as he mentioned, as part of our standard process, we do mail EasyPass customers when their accounts go into a low balance. And this past month, however, we proactively sent another notification to those customers. Because when we do hear about EasyPass customers with the video toll charge, they received, as was mentioned earlier, we often find that the leading reasons they are receiving that is related to out-of-date billing information. And that's not something we want to happen. It's not something they want to happen. So we keep trying to reach out where we can additionally from the standard notifications. And that's all that I have for the Executive Director report at this time.
Thank you. Any questions for Mary? All right, before we close out, I want to thank the team for preparing the meeting. This, as you do every month, is a fantastic job. Natalie's not here today, but I know she spearheads that. So hopefully she'll be watching this, and we're thanking her as well. But thanks to the entire team. It's not just one person, but I know that there's a lot that goes into it, and we all appreciate it. So with that comes Member Carroll's favorite part of the meeting.
Before we adjourn.
Oh, you have a question?
Isn't there another new staff?
Oh, yes. May I? I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Member Carroll, you're on it today.
Paying attention to the change.
Thank you very much. I'd like to introduce to the board Selena McKissick. She's coming on board in the executive office to assume the role and responsibilities that Ebony Moore used to have. We're glad to have Ebony Moore in with us today, too. So she has been here a few days, is still in a training role, and we're glad that we have her on with us. Thank you.
Good catch, sir. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else for the good of the order? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll go with Member Rosen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Member Carroll. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The meeting is hereby adjourned at, 11:14 a.m. So thank you all.